My son Raymond and his wife were hosting my 69th birthday. The house was full of people I did not know, drinking expensive champagne I suspected I had unknowingly paid for. I was smiling, trying to play the part of the grateful father, when my wife Clara leaned in close. Her voice was a terrified whisper that chilled my blood instantly. "Take the keys, Hubert. We are leaving right now. Do not run. Just walk to the back door and act like nothing is wrong." I thought she was joking, or maybe just tired of the noise, until she locked the truck doors, her hands shaking violently, and said, "Look at this." She shoved her phone in my face. What I saw on that screen made my heart stop. It was not a party itinerary. It was a receipt for a secure room in a state-run mental facility and a time-stamped order for an involuntary psychiatric hold. They were not throwing me a party. They were waiting for the extraction team to come and take me away forever. Before I tell you how I declared war on my own flesh and blood, let me know in the comments if you have ever had to cut a toxic family member out of your life to survive. I am Hubert Blackwood, and this is my story. My son and his wife were hosting my 69th birthday, but the air in the room didn't taste like celebration. It tasted like deceit. The house was filled with strangers, a sea of faces I didn't recognize, all drinking expensive champagne that I suspected I had unknowingly paid for. I was smiling, trying to play the part of the grateful father, when my wife, Clara, leaned in close. Her voice was a terrified whisper that chilled my blood instantly, cutting through the noise of the party like a razor. "Take the keys, Hubert. We are leaving right now. Do not run. Just walk to the back door and act like nothing is wrong." I thought she was joking, or perhaps just tired of the pretentious noise, until she surreptitiously shoved her phone in my face, her hands trembling. "Look at this," she hissed. What I saw on that screen made my heart hammer against my ribs. It wasn't a party itinerary. It was a receipt for a secure room in a state-run mental facility and a time-stamped order for an involuntary psychiatric hold. They weren't throwing me a party. They were waiting for an extraction team to come and drag me away forever. Before I tell you how I declared war on my own flesh and blood, you need to understand who I really am. To my neighbors, I am just old Hubert, the retired mechanic with grease permanently etched into his fingerprints, driving a 10-year-old Ford pickup and living in the same modest 3-bedroom house I bought in 1985. To my son Raymond and his ambitious wife Vanessa, I am a simple-minded old man who got lucky with a small pension and a workers' compensation settlement. They have absolutely no idea. They don't know about the logistics empire I built from the ground up. They don't know that the fleet of 200 trucks moving freight across the Southeast belongs to me. They certainly don't know that I own the warehouse district where Raymond works as a mid-level manager, or that I've been secretly paying the rent on this Buckhead mansion through a shell company because he couldn't make the payments. I kept it a secret to teach my son the value of $1, to make him a man rather than a trust fund baby. But as I stood in the foyer of the house I was effectively subsidizing, I realized I had failed miserably. The humiliation had started the moment we arrived. "Happy birthday, Dad," Raymond had said, coming down the grand staircase sweating through his silk shirt, looking like a guilty child who had broken a vase. Then Vanessa appeared, a woman who smiles with her mouth but never with her eyes, the kind of person who treats waiters like furniture. She walked up to me, holding a plastic garment bag like it contained a rotting rat. "Hubert, we need you to change," she said, her voice high and tight. I looked down at my best Sunday suit, clean and pressed by Clara that very morning. "Change?" I asked. "Yes, change," Vanessa insisted, pushing the bag into my chest. "This is a formal event. We have investors here. We can't have you walking around looking like you just came from the garage." Inside the bag was a polyester suit, a bright, cheap blue monstrosity that looked like something a clown would wear to a funeral. "I am not wearing this, Vanessa," I said, my dignity bristling. But Raymond had stepped in, begging with desperation in his eyes. "Please, Dad, just for the photos? We want everything to be perfect." I thought he was just embarrassed by his working-class father, so I relented. Vanessa didn't even let me use the guest room. She made me change in the pantry because the caterers were using the spare room. I stood there, smelling onions and cleaning supplies, squeezing into a suit 2 sizes too small. When I emerged, Vanessa looked me up and down with a sneer. "Better," she said. "Now listen, Hubert. When people ask, just say you used to do landscaping for the family. Do not talk about the mechanic shop. Just smile, nod, and stay in the kitchen." Landscaping. She wanted to introduce me as the hired help at my own birthday party. Now, looking at the evidence on Clara's phone, the cheap suit and the pantry made sense. They were stripping away my identity piece by piece, preparing to sell the narrative of a senile, confused old man to the world. They thought they were dealing with a gardener, but they had just poked a sleeping lion. "We are leaving, Raymond," I said, my voice surprisingly calm as we tried to bypass him at the side gate. I felt Clara tense up beside me, her hand gripping my arm like a lifeline. Raymond blocked the path, his large frame filling the exit. He was bigger than me now, soft from easy living, but heavy with the weight of his entitlement. He lunged forward, his fingers digging into the cheap fabric of the ridiculous blue polyester suit Vanessa had forced me to wear. "You aren't going anywhere, old man," he snarled, and for the first time, his mask slipped completely. I didn't see my son in that moment. I saw a stranger fueled by greed and scotch. "You're going to sit in that chair and take your medicine like a good boy. I've worked too hard for this. I'm not letting you ruin my payday." He tried to drag me back toward the house, back toward the men in white coats who were undoubtedly waiting for the signal. He forgot who I was. I might be 69 years old, but I spent 40 years lifting engine blocks and wrestling tires off semi-trucks. I am made of iron and concrete. Raymond is made of excuses. I grabbed his wrist and twisted it hard. He yelped in shock. I stepped in and shoved him with all my weight. All the disappointment, all the betrayal channeled into one motion. He flew backward, tripping over his expensive Italian loafers, and landed hard in Vanessa's prize rose bushes. "Run!" I yelled to Clara. We sprinted for the driveway. My knees protested, but I ignored the pain. We jumped into my old Ford truck, and I cranked the engine. It roared to life, that beautiful, ugly sound of a diesel engine that knows how to work. I saw Raymond scrambling up from the bushes and Vanessa running out the front door screaming into her phone. But I didn't stop. I floored it, driving right over their manicured lawn, crushing a row of solar lights as I bounced over the curb and into the night. The rain started falling hard as we merged onto the interstate, hammering against the roof of the pickup like 1,000 tiny fists. My personal phone, sitting in the cup holder, began to buzz relentlessly. Raymond. 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 I glanced at the preview messages flashing on the screen. "Dad, come back. You're having an episode. You forgot your medication." Gaslighting. He was trying to rewrite reality in real time, trying to make me doubt my own mind. For a second, I almost did. Maybe I was losing it, but then I looked at Clara. She wasn't confused. She was terrified. That terror made my mind clear as a winter morning. I drove until the city lights faded, pulling into the parking lot of a Motel 6. It looked run down and cheap, which meant it looked safe. Ironically, a semi-truck was idling in the back, and I recognized the logo on the trailer. It was one of mine, part of the fleet I had built, driven by an employee who didn't even know his boss was standing in the rain, about to find out he was penniless. I walked into the lobby, leaving Clara in the truck. "Room for 2, I told the night clerk, a young kid with headphones who barely looked up. "Lo yuan," he mumbled. I pulled out my debit card, the standard issue one, from the local credit union I use for groceries, the one Raymond knew about. I slid it into the machine. Declined. I frowned. That account had $5,000 in it. I kept it there specifically for emergencies. "Try it again," I said, my voice rising. "It must be the chip." The kid sighed and swiped it on his side. "It says, do not honor," he said, handing it back. "Means the bank flagged it. Stolen or lost." I felt a cold sweat break out on my neck. I stepped away and dialed the number on the back of the card. After an agonizing wait, a woman from the security department answered. When I identified myself, her voice was cool and detached. "Sir, this card was reported lost 2 hours ago by your power of attorney holder, Mr. Raymond Blackwood. He also placed a freeze on all associated assets due to the account holder's medical incapacity." The room spun. Medical incapacity. He hadn't even waited for the court order. He had called the bank, claimed I was crazy, and because he was my son, they believed him. I hung up, my hands shaking with a rage so hot it felt like it would burn the phone to ash. I walked back to the truck in the pouring rain. "They locked it," Clara whispered as soon as she saw my face. "They took it all." But the nightmare wasn't over. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Vanessa. I pressed play, needing to know the depth of their depravity. "Hi, Hubert." Her voice was sugary sweet, dripping with false concern before dropping an octave into pure malice. "We know you're at the motel off exit 42. We tracked your phone. Stay there. The police are on their way. We told them you were agitated, and we told them you might be armed. You know how the police are with confused older men. We don't want an accident." I sat frozen. She had weaponized the police against me. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was willing to let me get shot to secure her inheritance. I looked at the iPhone Raymond had given me last Christmas, a gift that was actually a shackle. I stepped out into the rain and threw the device as hard as I could against the pavement. It shattered. I stomped on the pieces until it was nothing but plastic and dust. They wanted a confused old man. They wanted a victim. They had forgotten who I was. I got back in the truck, soaked and shivering, but the fear was gone. I looked at Clara. "Where do we go?" she asked. "To the only place left," I said, putting the truck in gear. "We go underground. It's time to hunt." We left the motel and drove straight back into the darkness, returning to the scene of the crime to retrieve the arsenal I needed for this war. We parked the truck 3 blocks away under the cover of a massive oak tree that blocked the street lamp, plunging the cab into shadow. It was 3 in the morning, and the neighborhood was completely silent, save for the distant, rhythmic hum of the highway. Walking down the street where I had taught Raymond to ride a bike felt like walking through a graveyard. Every house I passed was a memory, and every shadow felt like an accusation. I kept my head down, pulling my collar up against the drizzle. Clara held my arm, her grip tight and trembling, but not from the cold. When we reached our driveway, I stopped cold in my tracks. There was a sign on the lawn. A metal stake driven right into the heart of Clara's prize-winning hydrangeas. For sale, cash only, immediate possession. I stared at it, feeling the blood pound in my temples. That sign wasn't just advertising property, it was advertising my demise. It was telling the world that Hubert Blackwood was finished, that he was gone, and that his legacy was being sold for parts. I wanted to rip it out of the ground and throw it through the front window, but I did not. Tonight, I was not a homeowner. I was a thief, and thieves do not draw attention. We crept to the back door, and I reached for my keys out of habit, but I stopped. Raymond had changed the locks. I knew it in my gut. He had probably done it hours ago while I was driving aimlessly on the interstate. My own key, the key to the kingdom I built, was useless metal now. We went to the basement window. It was small, too small for most men, but I had lost weight recently, and desperation makes you fit into places you shouldn't. I used my pocket knife to pry the latch, and it gave way with a rusted groan that sounded like a gunshot in the quiet night. I froze, waiting for lights to flick on in the neighbor's house. Nothing happened. I slid feet first into the darkness, landing on the concrete floor of the laundry room. The air was stale, smelling of mildew and unwashed clothes. They had cut the power, leaving the house cold and lifeless. I helped Clara through, and we stood there in the dark of our own basement. Above us, the floorboards creaked. Suddenly, headlights swept across the kitchen wall through the stairwell door. A car was pulling into the driveway. I grabbed Clara and pulled her down behind the kitchen island. We huddled there in the darkness, knees against our chests. As the front door lock clicked and opened, voices drifted in. "It smells like poverty in here." Vanessa's voice was sharp and loud, cutting through the sanctity of my home. "Keep your voice down," Raymond hissed. "The neighbors are nosy." "Let them look," she laughed, a cruel sound. "We are the owners now. Babe, we can do whatever we want." Footsteps followed. 3 sets. Heavy boots for Raymond, the click-clack of high heels for Vanessa, and a 3rd set, leather-soled and sneaky. "This is the place," Raymond said. "We need it moved fast. We are talking days, not weeks." I heard the 3rd man speak, his voice oily and slick. It was Mr. Sullivan, a local broker known for shady deals. "I can move it," Sullivan said, "but the price you are asking is low, suspiciously low. The market is hot. Why the fire sale?" "We have a liquidity issue." Vanessa lied smoothly. "We need the cash for medical expenses for the previous owner. He is very sick, very confused. We need to get him into a facility immediately." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth ached. Medical expenses? She was selling my life's work to pay for my imprisonment. I peeked around the edge of the island. Vanessa was wearing a white trench coat, looking like she was inspecting a contaminated site. She walked over to the Persian rug in the center of the room. Clara's pride and joy, a hand-woven gift from her grandmother. Vanessa didn't walk around it. She ground her muddy heels right into the intricate pattern. "This has to go," she said, wrinkling her nose. "It smells like old people. It smells like cabbage and Bengay. God, I hate that smell. We need to gut this place. Rip out the carpets, paint everything white. Can we get $450 for it?" Raymond asked Mr. Sullivan, standing by the fireplace and looking pale in the moonlight. Sullivan laughed. "In this condition, with that smell and a quick close, maybe 420 cash." "Do it," Vanessa said instantly. "420 is fine. That covers the deposit on the Sea Queen and leaves enough for the club fees." The Sea Queen. A boat. They were selling my house to buy a boat. I felt a heat rise in my chest that was hotter than any fire. I started to rise, my leg muscles tensing to spring. I was going to destroy them. I was going to end it right here. But a hand touched my shoulder. "Clara." She didn't say a word, just shook her head slowly. "No." She pointed down toward the garage. She was right. Violence would only prove them right. If I attacked them now, I would be the crazy old man they claimed I was. I swallowed the rage. It tasted like battery acid. We waited until they left, locking the door behind them. "Come on," I whispered to Clara. We moved to the detached garage. I went to the back corner where a heavy workbench was bolted to the floor. "Help me move this," I said. We heaved it aside, revealing a rubber mat. Underneath was concrete, but I knew better. I grabbed a sledgehammer from the wall. Clang. I hit the floor. The concrete cracked. It was a false layer, thin and cosmetic. I smashed it until there was a hole, reached into the dirt, and pulled out a steel box. Fireproof. Waterproof. I dialed the combination. Inside sat the truth. Not just $50,000 in cash for emergencies, but the bearer bonds, the original incorporation documents for Blackwood Logistics, and the stock certificates representing 51% of the voting shares. Raymond thought he was a manager. He didn't know he was an employee of a holding company owned by a trust, and the sole trustee was me. I pulled out the burner phone and dialed. "Caldwell." The lawyer answered on the first ring. "It is Hubert. Initiate the Omega Protocol." There was a pause. "Are you sure?" "Sir, that is a scorched earth contingency." "I am sure," I said. Caldwell hesitated, then spoke with clinical precision. I pulled the financials. "Hubert, it is worse than we thought. Raymond has been skimming from the warehouse inventory for 2 years. He owes a bookie in Atlantic City. And Vanessa has 7 credit cards maxed out in your name. They are desperate. They are selling the house at noon. I said, they can't sell what they don't own. Caldwell replied, but we need to stop the guardianship hearing. If the judge signs that order at 2, Raymond gets power over the trust. I looked at the box, then at the hammer. I am not going to stop the hearing. I said, silence on the line. Sir, Caldwell said slowly, if you don't stop it, you will be declared incompetent. You will lose your civil rights. No, I said, my voice steady. I am going to let them walk into that courtroom. I am going to let them stand before the judge and lie under oath. I want them to commit perjury. I want them to present the fake medical records. And when the trap snaps shut, I want there to be no escape. It was the Trojan horse strategy. I had to walk into the enemy camp unarmed. Set it up, I ordered. Call the precinct. Tell them you have a tip on where the confused Mr. Blackwood might be. I will be at the park near the house, feeding the pigeons, looking like easy prey. I hung up and looked at Clara. We are done hiding, V. It's time to go to war. We were driving down MLK Boulevard, just 3 blocks from the park where I told lawyer Caldwell I would be waiting. I was driving 10 miles under the limit, gripping the wheel at 10 and 2 like a terrified student driver, while Clara stared out the window, her posture rigid with anticipation. Then, the blue lights exploded in the rearview mirror, blinding me with their strobe. The siren chirped once, then wailed a short, aggressive burst. It was time. I looked at Clara. Showtime, I whispered. I let my shoulders slump, relaxing my facial muscles until my jaw hung slightly loose. I let the intelligence drain out of my eyes, leaving behind only a watery va con confusion. In that moment, I ceased to be Hubert Blackwood, the CEO. I was just an old man who had lost his way. I pulled over, hitting the curb hard enough to jar my teeth, a nice touch to sell the incompetence. Sergeant Miller approached the window, his hand resting tentatively on his holster. He saw an old truck and 2 elderly faces, but he was on edge. License and registration, he barked. I fumbled with my wallet, deliberately dropping it on the floor mat. I reached down slow and shaky. I am just going to the store. Officer, I said, my voice thin and reedy. I need milk. Seer, get out of the vehicle, Miller commanded. Clara started crying, a high-pitched, fearful sound that wasn't entirely acting. Please, officer, he is sick. He does not know where he is. I stumbled out of the truck, making sure to trip over my own feet. Miller grabbed my arm to steady me, but his grip was hard. Hubert Blackwood, he said into his radio. I have the subject. He seems disoriented. Suddenly, a black SUV screeched to a halt behind the cruiser. Raymond jumped out, wearing a mask of concern, followed closely by Vanessa, who was already dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. Officer, thank God, Raymond shouted. That is my father. He has been missing for hours. He is having a psychotic break. I looked at Raymond and let my eyes widen in fake recognition. Ray, I mumbled, offering a confused smile. Ray, did you bring the fishing poles? The fish are biting. Raymond looked at the officer with a tragic shake of his head. See, he said. He thinks it is 1,995. He is dangerous. Officer, he threatened his wife. He destroyed property. We have a medical transport team on the way. Miller relaxed, seeing only a confused geriatric in a cheap suit rambling about fishing. Okay, son far, he said. You take it from here. Vanessa stepped forward, grabbing my arm with nails that dug into my bicep like talons. Come on, Dad. Let's go get some ice cream. She pulled me toward an unmarked white van. 2 men in scrubs, bouncers pretending to be orderlies, shoved me into the back. As the door slammed, plunging me into darkness, smelling of bleach and stale sweat, I didn't fight. I sat there and let the anger sharpen my mind. 20 minutes later, we arrived at Serenity Hills Behavioral Health. It sounded like a spa, but it looked like a prison. They marched me into a room with beige walls and buzzing fluorescent lights, where Dr. Palmer was waiting. He was a thin man with greasy hair and a stain on his white coat. The kind of doctor who bills insurance for a kickback. He has been violent. Vanessa lied to Dr. Palmer, rolling up her sleeve to reveal a small bruise I knew she had gotten from bumping into a doorframe. He grabbed me. He was screaming about people stealing his money. Dr. Palmer nodded without looking at me. Paranoia, aggression, disorientation. Classic presentation for advanced dementia with psychotic features. Raymond stepped forward with a clipboard. We need to get him admitted, doctor, but the insurance requires his signature for the voluntary hold until the court order comes through tomorrow. Dr. Palmer waved his hand dismissively. Get him to sign. If he can't understand, guide his hand. Raymond loomed over me, smelling of fear and expensive cologne. Dad, he whispered, low enough that the doctor wouldn't hear. Sign the paper. If you do, I'll get you a sandwich. If you don't, I will tell them to give you the shot. The one that makes you sleep for 2 days. And Mom will be all alone. He was using my hunger and my wife against me. I let my hand shake violently as I took the pen. I didn't write Hubert Blackwood. I wrote Judas. The betrayer. Raymond snatched the clipboard, not even checking the signature, just seeing ink on the line. He signed it, he announced triumphantly. Admit him to Ward C. Palmer ordered. High security. No visitors. I spent 2 days in that cell, wearing paper scrub pants, sleeping on a thin mattress, waiting for the thunder. When Friday came, they dragged me to the courthouse. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and broken lives. I sat at the defense table wearing oversized gray sweatpants and a stained t-shirt Raymond had thrown at me, looking like a man who had forgotten how to tie his shoes. Beside me sat lawyer Yates, a public defender who checked his watch every minute, convinced this was a slam-dunk case of senility. Across the aisle, Raymond sat next to lawyer Ashford, who wore a suit that cost more than Yates made in a month. Lawyer Ashford stood up, pacing before the bench. Your Honor, he began, his voice like oiled leather. Mr. Hubert Blackwood is suffering from advanced cognitive decline. He is a danger to himself. He assaulted his son, fled a family gathering, and was found wandering by law enforcement. Then they called Vanessa to the stand. She wept fake tears, describing a horror movie that never happened. He ran into the kitchen and grabbed a carving knife. She sobbed to Judge Helen. He chased me around the island, screaming he was going to cut me. I was so scared for my life. It was a bold, vicious lie. As she stepped down, she walked past my table and gave me a tiny, imperceptible wink. She was enjoying this. Mr. Yates, Judge Helen said, do you have anything to add? Yates leaned over to me. Mr. Blackwood, we should just agree to the guardianship. It's the best deal. I didn't answer. I just rocked back and forth, mumbling. The judge picked up her pen. Based on the testimony and medical documents, I am prepared to grant full legal guardianship of Hubert Blackwood to his son, Raymond Blackwood. The pen hovered over the order. Raymond smiled, a predator's grin. The tip touched the paper. 1 second. 2 seconds. Bung. The double doors at the back of the courtroom flew open with a sound like a cannon shot. Heads snapped around. Standing in the doorway, backlit by the hallway lights, was Lawyer Caldwell. He was not alone. Behind him were 3 junior associates carrying banker's boxes, a videographer, and a large man in a dark suit. Caldwell walked down the center aisle with the stride of a man who owned the building. Your Honor, his baritone voice boomed. I apologize for the interruption, but I must insist that you put down that pen. Judge Helen stared. Who are you? This is a closed hearing. I am Arthur Caldwell, he said, stopping at the gate, and I am appearing on behalf of my client, Mr. Hubert Blackwood. Lawyer Ashford jumped up. Objection. Mr. Blackwood is indigent. He cannot afford Arthur Caldwell. Caldwell laughed. A sharp, barking sound. Mr. Blackwood could buy your firm, burn it to the ground, and rebuild it as a parking lot with the change in his pocket. He pushed through the gate, forcing Yates out of his seat. Caldwell sat next to me, clicked open his alligator skin briefcase, and winked. Ready to go to work, Mr. Chairman? I sat up straight. I rolled my shoulders. I brushed the lint off my dirty shirt and lifted my chin. The fog in my eyes cleared instantly, replaced by the steel that had built an empire. I am ready, I said, my voice deep and steady. The transformation was so sudden that Raymond looked like he had seen a ghost. Your Honor, Caldwell said, we move for immediate dismissal with prejudice. And we move for the immediate arrest of the plaintiffs for perjury, fraud, and attempted poisoning. On what grounds? Judge Helen asked, stunned. On the grounds that we have it all on tape, Caldwell said, plugging a flash drive into the AV card. The screens flickered to life. The video was crystal clear. 4K footage from a hidden camera in my kitchen. It showed Raymond standing over a pot of soup, pouring a vial of clear liquid into it. Just enough to make him sleep. The Raymond on the screen muttered, just enough to make him docile. The courtroom gasped. That is AI, Raymond shouted, jumping up. Sit down, the judge roared. Caldwell played the next clip, Vanessa holding Clara's quilt, flicking a lighter. Burn it all, she told her friends. Once the old man is gone, we get the insurance money. We get the house. And I get my Hermes bag. Then Caldwell presented the toxicology report confirming benzodiazepines in my hair sample. The same drug from the vial. Finally, he slammed a blue leather binder on the table. This is a neurological evaluation conducted this morning by Dr. Foster of the National Institute. It confirms my client has an IQ in the 99th percentile. He is not senile, he is brilliant. He is the CEO of Blackwood Logistics, a company valued at $80 million. $80 million. The number hung in the air. Raymond's mouth fell open. Vanessa stopped crying instantly, her eyes widening as she did the math of what she had just thrown away. Mr. Blackwood, the judge asked, looking at me. Is this true? I stood up, marching to the center of the room. It is true. Your Honor, I said. They wanted a senile old man, so I gave them one. I needed to know if there was anything left in my son worth saving. I turned to Raymond, who shrank back in his chair. But he is gone. You erased him with every lie and every drop of poison. I reached into my pocket, pulled out a single quarter, and flipped it onto the table in front of him. It spun and settled. There, I said, that is your inheritance. That is what you earned. I turned back to the judge. I am pressing charges for everything. Attempted poisoning, fraud, embezzlement. Case dismissed. Judge Helen banged her gavel, her face furious. Bailiff, take the plaintiffs into custody. As the bailiffs handcuffed Raymond and Vanessa, dragging them away, screaming my name, Strickland handed me my jacket. Well done, Mr. Chairman, he said. I put it on, buttoning it with precise movements. It is not over yet, I said, watching the doors close on my son. That was the legal battle. Now comes the eviction. Wait. My voice rang out across the courthouse lobby, a command that stopped the bailiffs in their tracks. They paused near the exit, holding Raymond and Vanessa by their arms, the handcuffs clicking and rattling in the sudden silence. I walked over to them, slow and heavy, like a storm front moving in. Lawyer Caldwell stood behind me, his arms crossed, a silent sentinel of the destruction I was about to unleash. I looked at Raymond. He was weeping openly now, snot running down his nose, looking at me with a pathetic mixture of terror and confusion. You called me a gardener, Song, I said, my voice low but carrying to every corner of the marble room. You told your friends I cut grass for a living. You were ashamed of my hands because they had dirt on them. I held up my hands. Calloused, scared, big. You never asked what I was growing in that garden. So, let me tell you. I pointed a finger at his chest. You work at the West Side Distribution Center. You walk around that warehouse like you are the king of the world, barking orders at men who work twice as hard as you for half the pay. You think you got that job because you were smart? You got that job because I called the foreman 10 years ago and told him to give you a chance. Raymond blinked, his mouth opening to speak, but I cut him off. But here is the part you missed. I don't just know the foreman. I own the building. I own the land under the building. I own the trucks that pull up to the dock. And I own the holding company that signs your paycheck every 2 weeks. Raymond's knees buckled, and the bailiff had to hold him up. You own the warehouse? He whispered. I own the whole district. I said, Blackwood Logistics. Who did you think Blackwood was? Raymond? Did you think it was a coincidence? I turned to Vanessa. She was pale, her makeup running, looking like a melting wax doll. And you? I said, you like to shop. You like the platinum cards. You bank with Sovereign Trust, don't you? She nodded dumbly. I bought a 6% stake in Sovereign Trust in 1998. I said, I sit on the board of directors. Vanessa. When you applied for that black card, the one you used to book your spa days while my wife sat in a hot room without water, the application came across my desk. I approved it. I wanted to see how deep the rot went. You spent $40,000 on handbags in 3 months. I leaned in close, smelling the sour scent of her fear. I instructed Caldwell to purchase your defaulted notes this morning. You don't owe the bank anymore. Vanessa, you owe me. And I am a very different kind of creditor. Raymond suddenly lunged forward, throwing himself onto the marble floor and wrapping his arms around my legs. Dad, please, he wailed. I am sorry. I was stupid. Don't take everything. I looked down at him. The thing clutching my leg wasn't a man. It was a parasite. I pulled my leg back and shoved him away with my foot. A dismissal of a stray dog. Get up, I said, my voice ice. You are not a man. Raymond, you are a scavenger. Vanessa tried to pivot then, looking at Clara with tearful eyes. Mom, please, she pleaded. It was all him. Tyrone made me do it. I loved you. Mom. Clara stepped out from behind me, moving with a grace that defied her age. She looked at the woman who had mocked her hats and slapped her across the face. A sharp, final sound like a pistol shot. Do not call me Mom, Clara said, her voice dangerous. You are a thief. You walked on my rugs with your dirty shoes. My husband is a king, and you thought he was a gardener because you couldn't see past the dirt under his nails. She signaled the bailiffs. Take her away. She smells like trash. We walked out of the courthouse and drove straight to the rental property in Buckhead. It was a sprawling estate with white columns, a house Raymond had leased to project success, unaware that I controlled the leasing agency. I pulled the truck up to the curb just as a convoy of 3 box trucks from Blackwood Logistics arrived. Big Rob, my toughest foreman, jumped out with 10 of my warehouse workers. Clear it out, I ordered. Everything. If it isn't nailed down, it goes to the curb. They went to work like a swarm of locusts in reverse. They grabbed the white Italian leather sofa and jammed it through the door frame, tearing the fabric before tossing it onto the wet grass. They carried the 70-inch television out and set it down hard. Crack. On the driveway. I went upstairs to the master bedroom, opening the window and throwing armfuls of Raymond's silk suits and Vanessa's designer dresses out into the mud below. Within an hour, the house was an empty shell, and their life was a pile of wet garbage on the lawn. I taped the eviction notice to the front door. Notice to vacate. Reason: fraudulent lease application. I sat in the truck and watched the rain fall on my son's destroyed status symbols. I picked up my phone and dialed Thompson, the general manager at the warehouse. Thompson, I said, it is true. Raymond is in custody, Thompson sighed. I am sorry, Hubert. He is a thief. I said, box up his personal effects. Actually, put them in a trash bag. Then draft a termination letter for gross misconduct and embezzlement. And Thompson, mark his file, not eligible for rehire, and flag his social security number in the industry database. I don't want him driving a forklift in this state ever again. That is a fatal blow for his career, Thompson said quietly. I know, I replied. Do it. Moments later, lawyer Caldwell sent me a video file. It was footage from outside the courthouse. A tow truck was dragging Vanessa's beloved white G-Wagon away by the axle, scraping the bumper against the asphalt. In the video, I saw Vanessa screaming as she was led to the transport van, watching her identity being hauled off to the auction block. I called Caldwell. Did you do it? It is done, he said. We froze the joint accounts and cut the cards. The balance is zero. And their lawyer? He tried to run Raymond's card for the retainer, and it declined. He filed a motion to withdraw as counsel immediately. They are alone. Hubert. No lawyer, no money, and no assets. They are destitute. I leaned back in the seat, feeling not guilt, but the cold satisfaction of a balance sheet that finally added up. I started the truck. Let's go home, V, I said to the empty seat beside me. The butcher's work is done. I returned to the piece of the lake, but I kept a digital eye on the wreckage I had left behind to ensure they stayed down. Lawyer Caldwell sent me the surveillance report 3 days later. My private investigator had tracked them to the Starlight Motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where you pay by the hour and the sheets are never truly clean. They had pawned Vanessa's wedding ring to pay for a week in advance. I sat in my office at the logistics center, drinking black coffee and watching the video feed from the camera the PI had planted outside their door. It was pathetic. The power couple of Buckhead was reduced to eating fast food on a stained mattress. The audio was crisp, allowing me to hear every word of their disintegration. You are useless, Raymond, Vanessa screamed, pacing the small room in the same wrinkled designer dress she had been arrested in. You promised me millions. You told me the old man was senile. You told me he had a fortune stuffed in that mattress, and all we had to do was commit him. Raymond was sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. I never told you to forge the checks, Vanessa, he shouted back. That was your idea. You said we needed bridge capital. You said Dad would never notice. I married a future millionaire, not a dishwasher. She spat, kicking his leg. Do something, Raymond. Fix this. Go talk to him. Beg him. I don't care what you have to do. I can't talk to him, Raymond said, his voice broken. He hates me, Vanessa. Did you see his eyes in that courtroom? He evicted us. He fired me. He bought your debt just to crush you. Then, Vanessa's eyes went wild with desperation. Then steal it, she hissed, kneeling in front of him. He is rich, right? He keeps cash in the house. I saw him take cash out of a tin box in the garage once, years ago. We go back to the house. We break in, we find the cash, and we run to Mexico. I watched Raymond's face struggle with fear before settling into the resolve of a desperate animal. Okay, he said. We do it tonight. I turned off the video and leaned back. They were coming back to the house they tried to steal. I picked up my phone and opened the app for the new military-grade security system I had installed the day after the eviction. I drove to the house around midnight, parking down the street in the shadows, just like I had done when I was on the run. At 2 a.m., a rusted sedan pulled up. 2 figures in dark hoodies emerged. I watched on my phone as Raymond wrapped a brick in his jacket and smashed the garage window. The same window Claire and I had used to escape. He boosted Vanessa inside, then followed. I tapped the screen on my phone. System armed, the magnetic locks engaged, and steel shutters slammed down over the windows with a mechanical clang. They were trapped in a concrete box. I activated the floodlights and pressed the microphone button. Welcome home, son Pone. My voice boomed through the speakers. Inside, they screamed, banging on the steel shutters. Dad, let us out. Raymond yelled. There is no help coming, I said. Only consequences. I called 911. 5 minutes later, the blue lights of 4 cruisers washed over the street. I walked up the driveway as Sergeant Miller's team swarmed the garage. When the door rolled up, Raymond and Vanessa were huddled on the floor, blinded by the lights. Police, drop the crowbar, Miller shouted. They were dragged out in handcuffs, face down on the concrete. Raymond looked up at me, standing there in my suit like a titan while he looked like a common criminal. Dad, he screamed. Tell them it is a mistake. I am your son. I walked closer, stopping 3 feet away. You broke into my house to steal the last thing I had left, I said coldly. You don't need a father, Raymond. You just need a bank. I told the sergeant to press full charges, burglary, attempted theft, and violation of the restraining order. As the car door slammed shut on my screaming son, I felt a deep, hollow ache. The hope that he might hit rock bottom and find character was extinguished. He hadn't found character, he had found a crowbar. 3 days later, I sat in the visiting room of the Fulton County Jail. The air smelled of industrial cleaner and fear. Raymond sat on the other side of the scratched plexiglass, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loose on his frame. He looked aged, his eyes red and swollen. He picked up the phone, his hand shaking. Dad, he breathed. Thank God. You have to get me out. The guy in the next cell screams all night. Please, just pay the bail. I will go to rehab. I listened to him beg, feeling nothing but a vast, empty silence. I reached into my pocket and smoothed a folded document against the glass. I am not here for bail, I said. This is a plea agreement from the district attorney. They are charging you with 20 counts. You are looking at 30 years. Raymond. He started to hyperventilate. No, Dad, please. There is a way out, I said, tapping the glass. I told the DA I would advocate for leniency. Probation. Maybe 18 months. Hope flared in his eyes. I will do anything, he said. You have to testify against Vanessa, I said calmly. The DA needs a witness to pin the poisoning charge. You have to say it was her idea. You have to say she mixed the sedative. You have to send your wife to prison for life so you can walk free. I waited for him to hesitate, to show a shred of loyalty to his partner in crime. He didn't blink. Where do I sign? He asked instantly. The speed of it hit me like a physical blow. He was a rat willing to eat his own mate to escape the trap. I slid the paper through the slot. He signed his name so fast the pen tore the paper. I signed it, he said, pushing it back, looking for approval. It was all her. Dad. She ruined my life. No, Raymond, I said, pocketing the paper. You ruined your life. She just handed you the shovel. I stood up to leave. Wait, Dad, he shouted, slamming his hand on the glass. When do I get out? We are family. I looked at his signature on the plea deal. The ink still wet. You are not family, I whispered, though my voice filled the room. You are a witness. You are a snitch. And you are a coward. I leaned in until my breath fogged the glass. I raised you to be a king, but you chose to be a snake. The son I loved died a long time ago. I do not know who you are, but you are not a Blackwood. I dropped the phone, letting it swing against the metal wall with a dull clang, and walked out of the jail while he screamed my name. I didn't look back. Justice was coming, but it tasted like ash. The trial of Vanessa Blackwood took place 6 months later, during a humid Georgia autumn. I sat in the back row of the gallery wearing a tan linen suit, holding Clara's hand. We were not there as witnesses, but as spectators to the final act of a tragedy we had survived. Raymond took the stand, looking like a ghost in an ill-fitting suit bought off the rack. He didn't dare look at me, keeping his eyes fixed on the prosecutor as he detailed every aspect of their conspiracy. He told the jury how Vanessa had researched the compounds, how she had forged the checks, and how she had planned the timeline of my demise. Vanessa sat at the defense table, shaking her head violently. When Raymond described how she mixed the sedative into the soup, she screamed, "You liar! You coward! You said we were partners!" Judge Helen banged the gavel, but the damage was done. The jury saw the truth: two rats fighting over a sinking ship. It took them only 4 hours to return a verdict of guilty on all counts. Vanessa was sentenced to 20 years in state prison. She had wanted a life of luxury. Instead, she got a cell and a jumpsuit that was definitely not designer. Raymond got his deal: 5 years probation and community service. He avoided prison, but he did not avoid punishment. The industry blacklisted him just as I had promised. He couldn't get a job managing a lemonade stand in Atlanta. I heard from Thompson that Raymond was working for a sanitation company now, riding the back of a garbage truck at 4 in the morning. I saw him once, about a month after the trial. I was stopped at a light in my new truck when a garbage truck pulled up next to me. Raymond was hanging off the back, wearing a neon vest and gloves stained with muck. He looked up and saw me. He saw the leather interior of my truck, the piece on my face. For a second, I thought he would wave or try to speak, but he just looked down, turned his back to me, and threw a trash bag into the compactor. The light changed, and I drove on. He was exactly where he belonged, cleaning up the mess. We sold the house in Decatur. There were too many ghosts in the walls. We moved 2 hours east to Lake Ayani, buying a home in a gated community with big windows overlooking the water. It is quiet here, just the sound of water lapping against the bulkhead. Clara loves it. She has a garden twice the size of the old one, and I hired a crew to do the heavy digging while she directs them like a general in her new sun hat. Lawyer Caldwell came to visit last Tuesday with the papers for the Clara Blackwood Legal Defense Fund. We put $5 million into it to provide top-tier legal representation for elderly people being exploited by their families. It is a good legacy, Caldwell said. It is going to scare the hell out of a lot of people. Good, I replied. Let them know that if they come for the old folks, there is a lion waiting in the grass. After Caldwell left, Clara and I sat on the dock watching the sunset paint the sky purple. My phone buzzed in my pocket. An unknown caller. I knew it was Raymond. He called once a month, usually when the regret became too much to bear. I looked at the screen, thinking about the boy I raised and the man who tried to imprison me. I pressed the side button, sending the call to voicemail, and powered the phone off. Who was that? Clara asked, squeezing my hand. Nobody, I said, taking a deep breath of the cool lake air. Just a wrong number. I spent 40 years building an empire, but my greatest battle was fighting for my dignity against the people I raised. I learned that you cannot inherit character. True wealth isn't about the trucks you own, it's about the peace of living authentically. We sat there until the stars came out, the king and his queen secure in their castle. The war was over, and for the first time in 69 years, Hubert Blackwood was truly at peace.